Jim Knowles, defensive coordinator at Penn State. I got a lot of buddies saying, "Oh, I'm not surprised." Yeah, well, I am. I am, and I was kind of read in on what was happening here. Everybody's surprised by it. You're not surprised if you've been paying attention to the internet over the past 72 hours, 96 hours. Yeah, I know the rumors had been floating around, but hit the rewind button 2 weeks. Hit the rewind button 3 weeks and ask yourself at any point in time, did you look at your buddy to the left or right if you're an Ohio State fan or a Penn State fan and say, Jim Knowles, Buckeyes, en route to a national championship, it looks like he'll probably be in State College or Norman, Oklahoma, or whatnot next year. No one knew that. No one expected that. So let's not try and dampen the mood in State College by saying, yeah, big story, but everyone knew it was coming. So this is a big deal. It's not some slam dunk game changer. It doesn't guarantee Penn State anything. What it does guarantee is they're all in, which are two words that we've thrown around with Ohio State through the entirety of last year. It's a theme that is going to become very familiar in college football. I think the familiar theme for whoever is at the finish line from this point moving forward in college football will be all in. Now, you could say, well, Josh, when has a program won a national title and not been all in? I'll grant you that. It takes a different kind of all in. It's one thing for Alabama in the 20 teens to win one after having been all in because we already knew them to be that. What I mean is, you could see some programs like Ohio State just did, really, like Notre Dame almost did, but especially moving forward, you may see some programs that haven't stacked a ton of national titles that win one. And the story is they went above and beyond the usual call of duty. They went above and beyond what the norm had been. Ohio State just did that. You can talk all you want to about how much money they spent on the roster or the super coaching staff they went and put together. Yeah, that's the point. Like, why would anyone denigrate that? Why would anyone speak pejoratively about that? That's going all in. That's pushing all your chips to the table for that given year. So Penn State looks to be doing that for this upcoming year. It started when they had the loss they had to Notre Dame. A lot of people I saw on a couple of message boards last night thought I said that was a humiliating loss. No, I was on the field for it. I saw how the game ended. I meant the players felt humiliated afterwards because they felt they gave the game away. So that's where it starts. That just lights a fire in you even more. So then you got a bunch of players announcing they're going to come back, reminiscent of what Ohio State had happened this time last year. You've known behind the scenes at Penn State for a little while. People are opening up their checkbooks more. It's a night and day different theme in terms of investment into the program from what it was there a few years ago. I've harped on that several times. I felt like no one's ever going to feel sorry for James Franklin, but I thought it was a little unfair to a degree that he was being held to a Ryan Day standard or a Kirby Smart standard or a Nick Saban standard at that time. People wanted Penn State to compete for what those guys and those programs were competing for, but he wasn't being given the resources. He wasn't getting the yeses to the same questions and requests that those coaches were getting yeses to. Well, now he's a lot further down the road, at the very least, on getting yeses to that. So this is not it's not so much about salvation. It's not that Jim Knowles comes in and rescues the program. Penn State's defense has been good. So Jim Knowles does not come in as a savior. It's not really about salvation. To me, it's more about symbolism. It's about, yeah, the fact that that dude's really good. He may be the best in the sport at what he does, but Penn State doesn't need saving defensively. But symbolically, what it means is going to permeate well beyond just the defensive coordinator hire. Because if you got a program that's willing to spend that kind of money on a defensive coordinator, you've got a program that's willing to spend in the portal. You've got a collective of people, not just administratively, but the donor class as well, that if you look at them and say something like, we got to be better at receiver and we got to do whatever it takes to get there. Traditionally, that has not been the Penn State way. And it may still not be the Penn State way, every day of the week. But if it takes a couple of moves per year, if it takes getting aggressive, it just feels a whole lot more like that program is on the path of being able to square that than they ever have been before. I wrote down two words on my notes over here. It feels so aggressive. It feels like one of the more aggressive moves, maybe the most aggressive move I remember Penn State making. Like I just said, they don't need saving defensively, but you can go from good to great defensively. You could do that. You just have to be all in. Now, Is all in enough? I don't want people to get confused on this. You can be all in and you can lose. You can be all in and lose 3 games. You still got to execute. You still got to have the players, which Jim Knowles had in abundance in Columbus, Ohio. But Knowles was a stud in Stillwater, Oklahoma as well. And I didn't see them littering the first round. I didn't see them lighting up the board on National Signing Day. So this is a guy who's performed without elite ingredients around him. So he has plenty of them in State College. So I won't worry about that so much. But I do think that the way, how should I put this? I don't want to go overboard. I think the way we look at Penn State football, given how aggressive they were just willing to be on this hire, could be changing a little bit. So here's what I mean by that. We're coming out of the Saban Bama era where they had a window that was every year. Georgia under Kirby right now, you assume they'll contend every year. Sark, Texas, Ohio State, Ryan Day. You assume those programs will contend every year. The same will be assumed about Dan Lanning at Oregon. Okay, so those are not window programs. Now, I think of Ole Miss a little bit more as a window type program, a program where they sort of have to build towards it and they better get it done in this year or the next year because then the window will close and then they got to build back towards it. Penn State's felt a little bit more like a window program. Penn State hasn't been a perennial player in the national championship picture. They've sort of been on the outside looking in. And it always felt like if they make a run at a title, you'll kind of see that season coming from a little ways off. So this past season was one of them. They didn't win the title, they didn't play for it, but it felt like they made a little bit stronger push towards it. And then, the conventional wisdom was they got one more shot, 2025. And if they don't get it done next year, then the window may close. Hey, maybe it won't. Because the symbolism behind hiring Jim Knowles is that if we're willing to be that aggressive there, maybe we're just willing to be that aggressive as a program. And if you're that aggressive as a program, your recruiting efforts are going to change. Your portal effectiveness is going to change. Your ability to staff, which they already do very good, but staff at an elite level is not going anywhere. And I'm just saying, forget what Penn State has been for a second, because this is a program that's been B plus for a long time. They don't have to take leaps and bounds to be a real legitimate national championship contender. It wasn't miles, it was just feet. It wasn't yards, it was inches here and there. Maybe that mentality collectively could make the difference here. So as for how this went down, I do want to encourage my Penn State folks to just hit mute for a second. This is the part that may make you angry. It shouldn't. Because I would have done the same thing if I were you, man. If I'm up there and I'm running the program, if I'm James Franklin and I've got the money, I'm paying whatever it takes to hire him. Not only do I land a top tier defensive coordinator, I take him away from a team that I got to go through 2, maybe 3 times in a season if I want to reach the apex. So what I'm about to say has nothing to do with Penn State. What I'm about to say has something to do with college football. Penn State folks are a little bit too close to this situation, probably to listen to this and view it rationally. So for the first time ever, I encourage you to just hit mute for a second. Okay, I hate this for college football. I just hate that it happens. This is the competitor in me. This is the guy that appreciates the tradition and the brands and how they should view each other. In the NFL, I watch this stuff happen all the time, and I don't care. Rivalries are not real to me in the NFL, only because I view rivalries through the prism of college football. And compared to college football and the hatred that exists in this sport, the Sunday game doesn't hold a candle to it. So I've never cared about coaches going from one place to another. But in college football, man, if you're the defensive coordinator that just took a bite out of a national championship at Ohio State, and then a few days later, you're at Penn State, I hate that. I've hated the staff moves between Ohio State and Michigan even more. I understand what the counter to that is. Everybody who made those moves could call me right now and walk me through the logic of it. And on an individual level, I know it would make sense. I know that. It doesn't change the 50,000-foot more, holistic view that I have of college football. I just wish there were some things that were off limits. Not legally, not rules-wise. I wish you didn't need a rule to tell you, don't be taking defensive coordinator jobs in the same conference that you're already a coordinator in, especially when you're at the apex program in the conference. That has nothing to do with Ohio State and Penn State. I would feel the same way if someone had just left Texas and went to Oklahoma, or someone went from Oregon to USC. I would hate it. Okay, Penn State folks, you can check back in now. Was there a little bit of staff drama around this whole thing at Ohio State? Yeah, pretty confident in saying that. Um, Nationally, you may not be aware of this. I know my Ohio State folks have probably been aware of it for a long time. Penn State folks may have recently become aware of it. It's no secret around Columbus that Larry Johnson's an institution at Ohio State, and he may not have always seen eye to eye with Jim Knowles. I mean, I think probably when Knowles got there, there was a long time before he even had full autonomy of the defense. You got a guy as tenured as Larry Johnson. This is not the only place this dynamic exists, by the way. And you've got some override ability with some decisions that are going to be made about your unit, specifically the defensive line. Whatever happened there, and then however it changed, and then whatever happened after the Oregon game, the first one this year when they went to Eugene and lost and underperformed pretty significantly defensively, I think it was pretty obvious. Hey, whatever internal strife happened, whoever had to jump down someone's throat, it worked. Because defensively, they looked a lot better. And then it culminated with them looking incredible in the postseason, which is the way they always should have looked. So whatever feelings got hurt there, it was for the greater good. Because I don't care if Jim Knowles and Ryan Day never talk again. Both of them have national championship rings. Every single one of y'all in Columbus and around the country, just Buckeye Nation in general, you guys got a national championship out of it. I think one of the biggest shocks that people would have if you could have the view that I get to have of this sport, which I'm so blessed to have, if you could get that view, I think one of the things that would shock you the most about college football is how rarely there is harmony amongst a coaching staff. These are the best at what they do in the world. And when you get to a place like Ohio State, you're the best at what you do at one of the premier programs and institutions in the sport. So it attracts alpha personalities. And believe it or not, everyone thinks their way is right. Now, the best are open to being coached and taught and learning, but really, when you get thrown into the fires of competition, you all think you're doing it the right way. And then you have butting of heads, not to mention you have really strong personalities in that room in general. And I've got news for you. I've watched teams win a national championship knowing full well there are coaches on this staff that have come to blows during the season. There are coaches who have had to be pulled apart during the season, and those are the teams winning titles. So what happened in Columbus, Ohio, and if the story ever gets fully told this year or not, whatever happened, happened. It's not unique to Ohio State. It's a huge testament to Ryan Day and the program he runs that they overcame it anyway. I mean, that's some of the most incredible aspects of college football is overcoming adversity. You just sometimes think of adversity as, oh, we're -2 in the turnover battle, late third quarter, and we're down to a team we're favored by 17 points against. Sometimes the adversity is my running backs coach and my secondary coach hate each other, and it's really causing friction in the staff room. Now, this is purely theoretical. It's not Ohio State. That stuff, it's always really entertaining for me to watch. It's kind of not entertaining. It's amazing for me to watch. So hidden aspect of this, yeah, this is big for Penn State fans. Yeah, it's big for James Franklin. It symbolically, I think, indicates Penn State's ready to be more aggressive than they've been in a long time. You know who else this is good for? Andy Kotelnicki, whose name I have not really heard much today. He was a first-year coordinator offensively for Penn State this past year. They were pretty good. He came over there from Kansas. I think he'll do good things in year 2 and beyond as well. But let me tell you what Andy Kotelnicki gets. He gets to be paired now with a defensive coordinator in Jim Knowles that allowed him 0 touchdowns in his last 21 possessions against. So back when Knowles was at Oklahoma State, Kotelnicki was up at Kansas. They went at each other a couple of times. When Knowles is at Oklahoma State, Knowles and Kotelnicki have gone against each other a couple of times, and Knowles shut him down. It is a huge benefit for someone who has had your number that thoroughly to now be on your team, to now be wearing, the same logo on the polo. You never know. You never know what difference that could have made. And I'll tell you this, Oklahoma was in the mix here as well. It is a huge deal for Oklahoma not to land Jim Knowles, because you want to see something impressive. Go back and watch Jim Knowles' recent history against Steve Sarkisian, all the way back to his days at Oklahoma State, up to and including this last matchup they had in the playoff in the Cotton Bowl. You go look at what Jim Knowles had done defensively against Steve Sarkisian, and you tell me it wouldn't have been a huge deal even past the surface for Oklahoma to land him. So they didn't. Penn State does. You take a big name from Ohio State, you add a big name in your stable, but you also probably do your offensive coordinator a big favor. First thing I would do if I were Andy Nicky, can I get his number, please? Can I get in a room with him as soon as I can? So the Big Ten has changed, was my last thought. The Big Ten's really changed. The Big Ten used to be such a gentleman's club, recruiting wise. You guys got a verbal from him? We'll back off. We'll back off. Can we have permission to talk to your defensive coordinator? No. Okay, fair enough, friend. We'll see you at Big Ten Media Days. How are you kids? It's cutthroat up there now, which is what it's been like in the SEC for a long time. So remember a couple of years ago, the money that was being poured into this conference increased several fold. And I did I don't know how many segments we did. We did several segments on the show where I told you that there was a very clear edict. There was a very clear message that had been sent around the Big Ten. And that was your product's got to be better. And it wasn't really so much aimed at Ohio State or even Michigan. It was aimed at the rest of the Big Ten, the places that perennially had not been contenders that should be. And the message was, you guys got to take this stuff more seriously. And the reaction was like, every one of us wants to win. But the response was, no, you want to win. We want you to need to win. Like your life depends on it. Like you're going to be miserable the rest of your days if you don't win. Cause that was the money that had been poured into the SEC, and that's the product the SEC had delivered. And it was very much t-shirt down south, sweater vest up north, and that had to change. And it's changed. Look at the way Nebraska hired when they got rid of Frost. They were very aggressive, and they went and got Matt Rule. Look at the way Wisconsin hired. Paul Chryst used to be good enough. He wasn't anymore. And they went and got Luke Fickell. But you look at the attitude, even amongst some of these places that already were. Ohio State already was, but they were never as aggressive as they were last year. And then the Michigan run. Think about how aggressive they were. And think about how much they pushed things relative to what Michigan had been. And look at Penn State right now. Do you ever think Penn State would be winning this kind of battle? It wasn't just trying to get him from Ohio State. Notre Dame wanted him. Oklahoma wanted him. Penn State got him. Now, what I'm interested in is, do they make similar hauls? Do they make similar pulls in talent acquisition? That's the next thing I'm paying attention to. That Jim Knowles, wide eyes that a lot of you had, at least when that news broke. Do you have that when you see Penn State landing a big name wide receiver or two? That's the next thing we want. But first things first, big day for Penn State, big day for James Franklin. I still do not quite agree with you guys that next year is national title or bust, but we are getting a little bit closer to that territory. So I will at least entertain that now. Good day. Good day to be a Nittany Lion.